Monday had to be a little bit of a whirlwind for
Yeah.
you. Can you kind of describe the emotions of that and also just starting new at 31, 32 years old here in Chicago?
Yeah, man. It definitely was a whirlwind, and but you know what? It come with the game. You know, as long if you play as long as I have, and you want to keep playing, I mean, that time, is inevitable almost. But my best days are still ahead of me, and I just kind of took it how it come, and through faith, just trusting that something will come along. I think the perfect match came along when I had the opportunity to join this team, being a part of something that is going to start here special. Me being somebody who wants to be in a position to compete for championships, encourage the younger guys around me, and just really share my experience and my hunger for greatness to others who want to achieve it. I'm in a special place, in a special time, in a special moment where I'm supposed to be, and I'm just really, really trusting the process, man. And that's how I got here.
Humpty Dumpty sat on a wall. Humpty Dumpty had a great fall. The dreaded Hail Mary and the loss of Andrew Billings was the great fall of our Humpty Dumptys. And all the king's horses and all the king's men couldn't put Humpty together again. In the first 7 games of the season, the Bears were the most effective defense in football. In weeks 9 through 18, the Bears ranked 28th in defensive success rating. Humpty Dumpty counted to 10. Humpty Dumpty built up again. As we enter the offseason, new coaches and new signings, and the draft coming up, the line is starting to take shape once again. And all the king's horses and all the king's men are happy that Humpty is together again. Hope is audacious. Let's break down the D-line, what happened, and what to look forward to. So, what did we learn about the Bears D-line this season and moving forward?
Yeah, the D-line was an interesting case study, I think, this year. And you heard Grady Jarrett there. I think he's going to be a really good addition, not just from a skill level standpoint, but from a leadership standpoint. I think this defense could use more of like those, like the Akeem Hicks, Khalil Mack type players. We don't really have a lot of those guys that are just going to like be monsters and like, bring it. Like Kyler Gordon brings that intensity. I feel like Jalen Johnson's got a little bit of that nasty in him.
Yeah.
Brisker, when he plays, kind of plays like that. But I don't know, it just feels like we got like some hum guys that are, like Tremaine Edmonds. He doesn't really strike fear. I mean, he's a huge man and terrifying, but
Yeah.
Montez Sweat, good player, but wouldn't put him in like that Khalil Mack level of intimidation. So I think Grady Jarrett kind of fits that mold. But yeah, it was interesting, I've never really like seen the Bears defense or like remember a season where they started out so dominant and then ended and to a point where you like couldn't really trust them. They became untrustable. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was weird. I know they had some injuries, but it was just like this weird metamorphosis. Like you talked about Humpty Dumpty. It was you can pinpoint, right? The moment that everything broke.
Yeah. 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 It was really, I mean, because they were like, I think the early episodes we would talk about how like the defense was going to keep us in games and did keep us in games. And then it kind of flipped and they became like just not great.
Yeah. I mean, they kept us in the Washington game for sure, and then ultimately blew it at the end. But then like they got blown out by New England and Arizona, like, and the division games they did okay, but like you weren't getting that. Yeah, we're gonna get a stop here. We're gonna get a turnover here. They would kept converting, like Minnesota converted a bunch of 3rd and 17s, and you're just like, whenever it's 3rd and 17, you're like, oh, they're for sure gonna get it. Like, just felt like they were always gonna do it. And I think a lot of it was that D-line was not getting to the quarterback. Sweat 5.5 sacks, 12 QB hits, but he just wasn't. He was battling a lot of injuries, I think, and he was just seeing a lot of double teams and things like that. And, DeMarcus Walker's fine on the other side, but he was just a guy, right? I don't think he was like a difference maker. Teams didn't like scheme for him or anything. And then Austin Booker, the other edge, he was a rookie, but like he didn't really flash as much. I think he needs to show a lot this year, to be honest. And then up the middle, Billings was good. He was our run stuffer. And then, once he went down, it got way worse too.
Yeah.
And I thought Dexter had a pretty good year. Zach Pickens seems like a miss. Like that dude was a healthy scratch towards the end of the season. He was a former 3rd-round pick. Like
Yeah.
that's not good. That's not a good reflection on polls. So I don't know what's going on with him. They're still hanging on to Dominic Robinson, who was healthy scratches for some time. He's an edge rusher. I think he's definitely a cut candidate. So it was an interesting year for the D line. I think polls may have overestimated the leap that Pickens would take and the contributions Booker would make, because really you just had one blue chip player in Sweat. And I think on the D line, you need at least 2, probably like 3 really good players if you want to compete. And so they made the investment in Grady Jarrett. They made the investment in Dio Odiembo, and I don't think they're done yet. I think they're probably going to use the 39 or 41, one of those two on an edge rusher, because there should be some good candidates there. But yeah, I knew the D line was done, or the defense was broken. Not only after that Hail Mary, but remember after the Cardinals game, the end of the half, when they just like broke off this touchdown run, and you're like, what?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. It seems like basically where once our run defense slipped, the defense as a whole
yeah,
just like
yeah.
collapsed. And I mean, was Andrew Billings someone that you had sort of put a lot of,
Yes.
yeah, you had prior to his injury known his like impact was like super.
Oh yeah, huge. Yeah, he was probably like, one of the most important players on the defense, because the defense doesn't have another player that looks like Andrew Billings. Like, this man is humongous, and he's very good at stopping the run, and he is like a wall out there, and he makes everybody's job easier. And once you removed him, you're playing Dexter a little bit out of position, and he got swallowed up, and we just couldn't adjust. And, it was part of the 10-game losing streak. Losing him was big for this line.
Where was Dexter supposed to be playing?
He plays, I think, the 3 technique. Billings plays more of the nose.
Nose is straight up.
Mm-hmm.
I was learning some 3 technique nose, 5 technique off the shoulder, straight up.
There you go.
Yeah,
Maybe
dude. I mean,
you should do this analysis.
brother, I was up at 4 in the morning today because I couldn't sleep because I partied a little bit and I was just up and I learned a lot of stuff. Yeah, it really, yeah, it felt like there was a lot of, I guess, hope in Montez Sweat doing what Montez Sweat did the year before, and he did not do that like to the level
Yeah.
that he had done. We're leading 2 teams in sacks, sort of
Yeah.
separately to 5.5, and like there was so when we did the Pulse of the People, pretty much everybody said the thing that they wanted to see improve was the O line, and my friend Abel, who has yet to have a podcast nickname, Mr. Vibes, I guess is maybe we can running. Working nickname, but he had said that he thought what he wanted to see improve was a defensive line. And when I first heard it, I was like, oh, interesting, because I didn't know. I thought we were good on the D line, and he was like correct. We were sort of.
I think the whole thing was such a house of cards that Poles was envisioning it to not have any hiccups, but it was built in such a way that if like 1 or 2 cards fell, the thing was going to crumble, because the depth behind some of the positions that you had and the assumptions you were making in some of the player development, none of that panned out. It was like a worst case scenario for Poles, and it just like showed on the field. And that's why I think they're going to take a lot of swings. They've already taken 3 swings at the offensive line, right, with 3 new players, and I don't think they're done. And they've taken 2 swings at the defensive line. I don't think they're done. So they're just going to take a bunch of swings and, have depth and have rotation, because honestly, they filled out all the other stuff last year. It's not like they have glaring needs at quarterback and wide receiver and tight end, and like they can improve. Sure, they can improve the running back room. They can improve the wide receiver room by adding some, skill guys, but they have enough to compete with there. So like, why not just find depth in the trenches? And defensive line, like we talked about, was probably the second biggest need this year after offensive line.
Yeah.
And so I expect them to keep attacking it.
Grady Jarrett starting. Deo also starting? Where do you think he fits within this?
I think he starts at the end position, especially with Walker gone. It's just him and he's competing with Booker, I guess, right now. So the beauty of Dio is he can also play inside as well. But he fits Dennis Allen's like player profile. So Dennis Allen on the outside and the edge, he likes big defensive ends, like we talked about, I think last week. He likes like guys that are like 6'5" and over 250. Like these are the types of ends that he's looking for. When you look at, when he was part of Trey Hendrickson draft and Chase Young, Marcus Davenport, these guys they all fit that mold of the people that Dennis Allen has been around. And luckily, there are guys who fit that same profile in this draft that should be available at picks 39 and 41 for them to select somebody. Nick Scouton out of Texas A&M, Michael Williams out of Georgia, who Q really liked. There's Shamar Stewart, who won the Combine Olympics, which is basically like he had not a lot of production in college, but he crushed all the combine workouts. So you always want to be careful of that. Jack Sawyer and JT Tumalo, they're both on Ohio State. They're like kind of high floor guys. Jack Sawyer, especially like smart, tough, defensive dude, like not like maybe the world's best athlete or anything, but like he's going to be a solid NFL player, somebody you can just plug in. Landon Jackson from Arkansas has been linked to the Bears. He's like a tough, gritty player as well. So those guys I think will be there at 39 and 41 when the Bears pick in the second round. So I think they'll take one of those guys around that spot.
One of my favorite things about doing this podcast is to listen to you name like 10 names of just people that I've never heard before. And then to hear, it's like I could just close my eyes and just like makes me fall in love, dude. It's really, that's
It's like, who are these guys?
I do this to learn, man. I do this to learn.
No, that's great. I mean, look, it's not like I knew who they were before, I'd heard of them either. So, and this is the time, man. This is when you like read the same names and see the same names in mock drafts over and over again, and you start to like be like, hey, I kind of like that guy. You know absolutely nothing about him other than like somebody on the internet told you they were good.
Yeah, dude. It's
kind of where we're at.
What what was Montez Sweat's sort of injury this year, or kind of holding?
Oh, he had a plethora of injuries.
Yeah,
he had like a foot injury and a calf injury and like maybe like a quad or something. I mean, he was just doing all sorts of things down there. But he never missed. I think he only missed one game, so he played through it. He just wasn't super. He wasn't super effective.
So what are you expecting from him this season? Coming in, let's assume he's healthy. What do you like? What do you think that the Bears need him to do?
I think the Bears need him to get double-digit sacks. I would love to see 10 and a half, 11 sacks on the year for Montez Sweat. Dio, he didn't have a lot of sacks last year, but he had 17 QB hits last year. So he was getting there, which would have been second actually. They finished second on the Bears. Dexter had, I think he finished first with 19. Dio had 17, so he would have finished second on the Bears last year with QB hits. So I think Dio could be a good pick. He's young, he's athletic, he fits the Dennis Allen mold. So and I keep saying that because I'm just trying to emphasize the point that Dennis Allen will know how to utilize his skill set, or like his size and his speed and know where to put him and when to rush him and what kind of stunts to run to make him the most effective. So that should be exciting. Because they're gonna need that defensive line to improve, especially when you're in this division with, Love and Goff and I don't know what Minnesota's going to put out there. Maybe it's Aaron Rodgers. Who knows, right? But like,
yeah.
At least with Love, you've got a quarterback that's pretty mobile. If they roll McCarthy out there, he's pretty mobile. Goff is basically a statue, but they have the best offensive line in football. So Dennis Allen does have his work cut out for him, but it's exciting to see what he can do.
Yeah, and I mean, I guess, to Montez Sweat's like where if he's basically the only person you're kind of concerned about at a line, they're like can double team him or whatever. So then that kind of neutralizes him, which I think led to, good Ron Dexter's.
Yeah, and Dio's not going to be that guy that also keeps defensive. I mean, if they wanted to make a splash, they would have gone after Trey Hendrickson. Now that would have been like crazy. That would have been like fun to watch. And then, if Myles Garrett was still in play, like, that would have been a game changer. I think they're still gonna have to draft somebody to hope turns into that game changer. That's why they're taking multiple swings, right? Either Dio or somebody that they draft. Dio's young enough where he could be. We don't know, and then obviously the person that they draft, they're hoping will turn into that person. So, yeah, take the more bites of the apple you take, the more
Yeah.
likely you are to succeed. So
Sounds like with like Dio, there's like this like potential upside with Grady Jarrett. There's this like person we know, sort of leadership,
yep,
individual, like yeah. Yeah, and then you get the rookie, whoever you draft, that's like maybe they don't need to rush him out there, but can grow behind these folks.
yeah, and then you still have Booker there, who was a rookie last year and did okay. I wouldn't say he, was great by any means, but if he can learn from Sweat and he doesn't have to start, and he can learn from, Grady Jarrett, he can learn from Dio, maybe he's the guy that could surprise as well. That's what we're hoping with Dominique Robinson, and D-Rob never took off. So maybe Booker is kind of the new D-Rob, and they're just going to like cut him and be like, all right, well, now this is our young guy that we hope takes off, and we'll see what happens.
Yeah. Okay, so as we get kind of close to the end, I wanted to just quickly touch on we signed another wide receiver, Zacchaeus. We also last week we signed a tight end whose name I'm blanking on. We didn't really give him a shout out for, but
Durham Smythe.
yeah, Smythe. So shout out to him. But can you tell us a little bit about Zacchaeus and the value that he brings to this?
Yeah, so Zacchaeus he's labeled as a speed guy, but honestly, like I think DJ and Rome ran faster 40s than him. So I wouldn't say he's like blowing the top off anybody that we don't already have, but he is a slot guy. He has return skills, so he's kind of gonna fit a couple different molds. You can line him up different spots on the field. And he's a pro. He played with Jaden Daniels last year in Washington, had a pretty good season. So it's a pretty good signing. We'll see I think Ben will get creative with him. Now they did bring in Mecole Hardman and Rondale Moore in for a visit today. And those would be like true speed guys. They'd be faster than anybody that we have on the team right now. Rondale Moore would be pretty exciting. Not just because he's a Purdue guy. Go Purdue. But I think he's like pretty undervalued, and I think he'd be good in a bounce back year, especially with Rome and DJ around him. He'd be like a fantastic, like legit number 3. But there's a lot of targets. There's not that many targets to go around, right? And when we know that Ben likes to utilize the tight end position, and so I would look for Cole Kmet to also have a pretty big bounce back year.
Yeah, sweet. All right. Any final thoughts on the D-line draft or people that we got currently on the roster?
No, I think they have a specific type of player that they're going after, as we saw with Dennis Allen, and I mean he knows what he's doing. So I think we just have to kind of trust the process, and lucky for us, or I guess lucky for Dennis Allen, there are players that fit the mold of what he's looking for that should be available. Not at number 10 where we have to reach, but at 39 and 41 where we can take players that make sense there. So the needs fit the supply, I guess you could say, for this particular position. So Bears are in a good spot.
Yeah, that's nice that's a nice way to end the episode. I think that's a nice feeling that we're in a good spot.
Yeah.
Okay, so articles on ontapsportsnet.com.
Yep.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, there's one that talks about a little bit about Grady Jarrett and just the press conference. It's probably the latest one I wrote, so you can check that out.
Badass. For Samir Patel, I'm Chirag Rathod. We are the Bears in the neighborhood, and we will catch y'all next week.
Peace out.